He is a Pennsylvania lawmaker, by the way, from the 196th Legislative District. He also has been holding a number of hearings over the last few months. He is the chairman of that particular committee doing the hearings right now. He is Seth Grove from New York, and he joins us here on WSBA Morning News with Gary Sutton. On the spur of the moment this morning, I texted him this morning. He's even changed times with me. I owe the guy like a dinner today anyway. Good morning, Seth. How are you doing?
Good morning, Gary. It's always an honor to be on. So
Well,
anytime.
Always an honor to have you, my friend. And, lawmakers, I was reading this morning in Channel 27 news that lawmakers released a report pushing for changes to Pennsylvania's election system. You've been holding hearings over the last month about this, and I wanted to get into it with you this morning. You're kind of the chairman of that committee that does this kind of thing. And what have you heard over the last month? And you did it from start to finish on this whole election system, right?
Yeah, we decided to pause any election movement, any election changes until we did a deep dive into the overall election law. We did 10 hearings and basically broke down each hearing into a subset of election policy. So, voter registration to post-election audits and everything in between, because we want to make sure we had the best information moving forward on our election law and the administration election in the Commonwealth so we can make good decisions moving forward. And I'm really glad we did, because we found some major internal control errors within our election process that we need to close up.
Now, there's a lot of people, I'm sure, sitting out there who maybe are on one side or the other who are saying, self-fulfilling prophecy. You do 10 hearings. You're just going to bear out what you think. You didn't go into it with this. You went into it with kind of an open mind and saying, okay, what are we going to learn from the election system? Because a lot of people were talking after the election was over this year, obviously. So what did you learn from the hearings that you've had?
Yeah, I think we learned a lot. Every single hearing I learned something new about the election process. And listen, most people's experience voting, right, is going to the voting booth and coming out, right? So,
right.
They don't know anything that happens behind the scenes, what counties have to do to facilitate the elections, their interaction with departments, the whole 9 yards, right? So we want to make sure we had factual information. We're basing our judgment on factual information moving forward. And, what we learned is our base law is from 1937. A lot of that language is still sitting there. So we have an election predicated on an agrarian society that is non-transient, and everybody knows who their neighbors are, right? That's 1937 Pennsylvania. That's not 2021 Pennsylvania. We are a very transient society. Even where we live in Dover, right?
Right.
We got a lot of new people moving in and out of the Dover community every single day. So just relying on poll workers to know that John Smith is actually John Smith is problematic, and it's not John Smith anymore in Dover, right? We have a lot of different names on those voter registration poll books, which is fine. We've learned that elections directors actually don't need to validate voter registration applications. Think about that. An organization can do a dump of 10,000 voter registration applications to a county. That county has 15 days to do something with those, by the way, while still trying to operate an election, right? There's not enough time for counties to validate that. So what a lot of counties do is do their best, and then they just add people to the voter rolls, whether they're eligible or not.
Yeah.
To me, that's problematic. Voter registration is your gatekeeper to the election, right?
Okay.
There's individuals that should not be registered to vote.
Talk about that a little bit, because some people will probably sit there saying, what's that mean exactly?
Right. So if you're not a citizen, you shouldn't be registered to vote. You're not allowed to vote in the Commonwealth or in the United States.
Right.
And it's a double whammy for those individuals, too, because even if you accidentally somehow get registered to vote, your path to citizenship ends. You're not allowed to be a citizen in the United States if you're even registered to vote before you are a U.S. citizen.
Right.
So that's really problematic for a lot of people.
And I guess let me ask you one other question before you go on, though. But for me, are there a lot of people in that range that you find out? Did you get any idea or semblance of numbers there? Is that a major problem in the state or in the United States?
So we just got successfully sued for having over 20,000 deceased people still on our voter rolls that need cleaned out. A few years ago, if you remember, so we have motor voter, right? So
Right.
You can go into any PennDOT office and register to vote. They had to change their system because they were registering non-citizens to vote. Those individuals, we don't know if they're still on those voter maintenance lists. Our Department of State has not been forthright on their investigation and whether they actually removed those individuals and how many were removed because of that. So right now we don't know. So we need to figure out a way. And again, list maintenance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Going through your list and validating to make sure that people are supposed to be on that list. You remove dead people, individuals who have passed away, you want removed from your list as well.
Right.
So it's critically important we do those. And we have a really bad list maintenance system here in the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
And that's the most important part, right? You're on the voter registration list. You have a pathway to vote. Like that is access and that is security 101 with that. So you want to make sure you're doing your due diligence.
Right. Okay. So take us on a little bit further.
Other problems we found is, validating who's voting, right? So the Supreme Court removed the signature requirement of the mail-in and absentee ballots in the Commonwealth. Well, that means there's absolutely no integrity provision on those at all. None. So you literally can register to vote, and we know that you don't necessarily need to be a valid voter to get registered in Pennsylvania, and then you can just go request an absentee ballot, same process, right? And then you can go vote, and there's really no catch in doing all that. So the entire system is problematic from start to finish, and that's why we've asked for more security features. We want signature verification back. We want training for elections directors and election officials to do signature verification and make sure we have actual uniform elections in the Commonwealth. I mean, I think we all remember the Brewster-Ziccarelli Senate seat where the Supreme Court came back and said, I know we understand Allegheny and Westmoreland County counted their ballots differently, but we're going to allow Allegheny County, how you counted your ballots, we're going to allow you to do that for this and only this election, basically giving Brewster the win on that Senate seat because it was such a tight race. I mean, those are the salient issues we have. And, for the life of me, I've never heard a local government and county directors have said this in every single hearing we had. They're like, we need more laws on standardization and uniformity. I've never heard a local government come to state government and say, give us more laws, please. We need them.
Hey, Yogi Berra-isms on his birthday today. He died in 2015. Why be jealous over things you don't have? And then this one, and this is kind of where Seth Grove is this morning, I think, that little things are big. As he's been listening about our election system over the last month or so, little things are big. Yogi Berra might have been onto something here, and you're kind of looking at the little and the big things, right, that can really turn an election maybe in the right or wrong direction. All we wanted is in a fair direction, right?
Right. And I think Florida is a good lesson. I think everybody remembers Florida in 2000, the hanging chad, laughing stock of the world.
I was actually doing my show down there watching that stuff at night, believe it or not. It was crazy. Yeah.
Right. So, fast forward to last election, basically a flawless election because they put the time and effort to work through election law changes. So, I mean, let's get the count done election night. Right. Let's have the bulk of the counting done. You're not going to get like the overseas ballots because they were required by federal law to extend that out a few days afterwards. You get well over 90% of the count done that election night. You now have more confidence in your election. Counties don't keep on counting. And I got to be honest, I've yet to hear a story of any county finding, magically finding ballots and them being anything but Democrat ballots, right? Right. It's mind-blowing. So locking counties down into setting up an election system or a timeline that allows counties to get the counting done election day, I think helps voters moving forward. And then we probably one of the scariest, outside of all the voter registration stuff, the scariest thing that we discovered through, and it took a couple hearings to get this information out. Prior to having online voter registration, the Department of State and a lot of states have this web API And what it does is allow third-party entities to create a website that's certified by the Department of State, and they can do voter registration out of that. So they're out there doing voter registration through this created website. They get your name, your address, last 4 years social, or driver's license number, and your signature, and then they collect that information. They send a batch up to the Department of State, and the Department of State sends it down to the correct counties for their due diligence, right? But those third parties keep that information, and then they use it for follow-up. Have you voted? Will you vote? And entities that have this, Rock the Vote, Tom Wolf for governor, it's political parties, campaigns, and just other organizations, right? So here's the scary part. So, if I have a third party group, I have your voter registration information, right? So now we have mail-in and no excuse ballots. The information to apply is the same for both of those. I can go online and take my voter registration data that I have and keep. I can apply for a mail-in ballot.
Okay.
And part of the law, that ballot doesn't need to be sent to my home address. I can have that rerouted elsewhere. So conceivably, third-party entities can request mail-in ballots. And we asked Department of State, I ran that scenario through with their elections chief over at the Department of State and said, what protections do you have to ensure these third-party entities aren't actually applying for ballots on behalf of residents they have previously registered and rerouting them to a different address?
Interesting.
And they didn't even think about that.
And it's a question that we'll have to leave unanswered at this point today.
Right.
But I want to come back and talk to you more later on about some other things that maybe you found out. I saw that your co-chairman, Ms. Davidson, did not agree with you. They want a little different kind of look at things, same-day registration, voter registration, and pre-canvassing, which she says has bipartisan support. We'll get into that at another time. A lot of interesting stuff there, Seth. Thank you for taking the time to talk with us this morning, and we'll follow up on that with you, okay?
We'll do. Thanks, Gary.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate
Seth Grove, representative of the 196th Legislative District.